Hi guys, the Middle Maniac back again, and yep, my voice is back. I've drank enough water. I'm not dehydrated anymore. So, um, anyway, um, in this video, I'm doing a little bit of a different video. This one. So in this video, I'm gonna be listing off my favorite albums from each decade of metal. So, starting with the '70s, going all the way up to present. And yeah, I know I've said many times that I don't really like '70s music all that much, even '70s metal. But for the sake of this video, for like the '70s, for something from the '70s, I just went with something the '70s album a '70s album I have listened to that I can tolerate the most. So yeah, let's begin. So my favorite album from the '70s is I have this pile backwards. Hold on, there we go. So my favorite metal album from the '70s is "Sin After Sin" by Judas Priest. I'm already messing up my words. I'm so sorry about that. But yeah, "Sin After Sin" by Judas Priest. Yeah, it's the most tolerable of the '70s stuff. There are like two or three songs I do like from this album. Um, "Starbreaker" is pretty good, and Dissident Aggressor is really good, and then Race with the Devil's really good. But yeah, so this is definitely the most tolerable of the '70s, any '70s metal album or '70s album in general that I've listened to. Um, but yeah, it's pretty good for what it is. Especially the songs that I just mentioned are actually pretty good. I like it. Those songs. And the artwork's also really good too. Like apparently this was based off of a real life mausoleum, although it did not have a skull on it on the actual one. But yeah, it's pretty good for what it is. But yeah, that's my favorite metal album from the '70s. All right, my favorite metal album from the '80s is, of course, none other than "The Number of the Beast" by Iron Maiden. Well, I don't know. I kind of had a hard time with this one because I was struggling to choose what was my favorite '80s metal album. It was a hard choice between this one, "Defenders of the Faith" by Judas Priest, and "Scream Bloody Gore" by Death. And what was the other one? There was one more. Oh yeah, and "Show No Mercy" by Slayer. But in the end, I had to go with the Number of the Beast. It sounds the most '80s. Well, I don't think Judas Priest does. Defenders of the Faith does too, but I just had to go with this one. Yeah, just the iconic songs paired with this iconic artwork, and paired with the fact that Iron Maiden's one of the most iconic metal bands of all time, and they were definitely their best in the '80s. And yeah, this is just the best, in my opinion, the best and metal album of the '80s, and my favorite metal album of the '80s. So good, absolutely love it. But yeah, also, I also did have a hard time picking my favorite metal album from the '90s because there are a few that I do really like. But in the end, I had to go with "The Sound of Perseverance" by Death. Yeah, okay, so this was actually okay. So I really had a hard time choosing between this, "From Beyond" by Massacre, and what was the other one? Hold on, I had it here somewhere. I put it away. Um, oh yeah, um, "Eaten Back to Life" by Cannibal Corpse. But again, in the end, I had to go with this one because it's just definitely it stands out the most, in my opinion, compared to the other ones I was choosing from. But yeah, it's Death's final stand, their last album, before Chuck went to do Control Denied. Um, and it's definitely Death at their most evolved. Their most technical, just everything's just at peak performance. Um, But yeah, I absolutely love it. And yeah, Death wasn't death metal anymore at this point, but they were still really, really good. Like this album and then Symbolic, the one that came before it, are definitely the best out of their later stuff. Um, I mean, there's some absolute awesome songs on here. Scavenger of Human Sorrow, Bite the Pain, Spirit Crusher, Story to Tell, Voice of the Soul, excellent instrumental. Forgive Us to Suffer, Moment of Clarity, the Painkiller cover. But yeah, like almost like 99% of this album is just awesome. Again, the only thing I don't like from it is Flesh and the Power It Holds. But other than that, this is just an amazing album, and definitely my favorite from the 90s. Oh yeah, and it was also a hard choice between all of those other ones I just mentioned, and then Jugulator. Like Jugulator was another one that I really wanted to put as my favorite, but I really had to go with this though. But Jugulator definitely would be my second favorite of the '90s. All right, my favorite album from the 2000s. This was actually not too hard of a decision, although there was one other no, yeah, there was actually two others that I really wanted to put, but in the end I had to go with this one, and that is Gateways to Annihilation by Morbid Angel. There we go. Yeah, so the other ones that this was competing against for me as being my favorites of the 2000s was the first Deathclock album and then Brave New World by Iron Maiden. But in the end, I had to go with this one because this is definitely the most. I know I love it because it's the most epic out of the ones I just mentioned. The most epic, most grand sounding, and and definitely the best Morbid Angel album with Steve Tucker. It's just absolutely amazing. The artwork again is I've said this before and I'll say it again. It reminds me of something from it reminds me of like the background, the landscape the landscape from the game, the second Doom game, Doom Hell on Earth. Um, but yeah, it's just amazing. With songs like Summoning Redemption, Ageless Still I Am, He Who Sleeps, At One with Nothing, Opening Up the Gates, Secured Limitations, and God of the Forsaken. Just an absolutely epic sounding album. Definitely just an album that cannot be ignored, and it's definitely a mandatory listen, especially for someone who's just getting into Morbid Angel. Like this is a mandatory listen, and then Altars of Madness. But yeah, it's just absolutely amazing. I love it. Alright, so my favorite album from the 2010s, this is actually another really hard choice, but in the end I had to go with, hold on. There's dust on the inside of this. I don't know, wait. The hell? I don't know, I'll figure it out later. I think it's scratched or something, I'll have to replace the cover. But yeah, in the end I had to go with, Death Album 3 by Deathclock. This one is absolute awesomeness. Like, my favorite, for the most part, my favorite album of the modern era overall. It's just everything's right about this one. Like, yeah, yeah, everything's right about this. Everything's right about this one, and yeah, it's from a album from a parody band. But it's so professional sounding, so official sounding that if you didn't know Show Metalocalypse and you didn't know about Deathclock, like you would think that this is from a legit band. Like that's how good this album is, and it's just absolutely awesome. Like I love every single minute of this album, even though I don't really care for Sky Hunter that much. But even with that, even for that song, I think it's still pretty good for what it is. Like, I don't hate any song on this album. I don't really skip any song on this album that much. Like, yes, Sky Hunter I'll skip like once in a while, but still, even though I don't like it, I'll play it most of the time. I just absolutely love this album. Um, okay, yeah, that's it. I didn't really pick an album for the 2020s just because it is the beginning of the 2020s, so I haven't really stumbled across any albums from this decade yet that I like. I'm kind of still waiting for. Hold on, I got something on my screen. I'm kind of still waiting for like albums from some of my favorite bands. Like I'm still waiting for a 2020 album from like Judas Priest or Iron Maiden or Cannibal Corpse. Massacre. Massacre was actually supposed to release an album this year, but of course because of the pandemic, that didn't happen. And then like bands like those, some of my favorite bands, like I'm still waiting for newer albums, and so yeah, who knows? Maybe near the end of this year, or maybe even next year. Um, I'm gonna be a surprise, man. I really hope that I really hope, especially with Massacre, because they already had an album planned for this year. So who knows? But hopefully that's their album. That album's gonna be released soon at some point. But anyway, that's it for my for listing off my favorite. Hold on, there we go. Where's the hair? Anyway, so that was it for me listing off my favorite metal album of each decade of metal. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.